please state and spell your first and last name for the record?
Yeah, Kenneth, Kenneth, Gallagher, Gallagher.
Doctor, I'm going to have you introduce yourself to the jury and tell them what you do for a living.
Hi, I'm Dr. Gallagher. I'm from the Alaska State Medical Examiner's Office. Become a forensic pathologist. I completed medical school at The Ohio State University after undergraduate school at Eastern Washington University. Following medical school, I did residency and fellowship in forensic pathology and general pathology. After residency at Ball Memorial Hospital, I did my fellowship at the Hennepin County Medical Examiner's Office in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I also did a fellowship in cytopathology at the University of Mississippi in Jackson, Mississippi. Following residency and fellowship, we complete our board certification through the American Board of Pathology in anatomic pathology, which is the study of tissues, the clinical pathology, which is the study of blood work, forensic pathology, which is the study ultimately of determining the cause and manner of death in cases of unattended death. And by that I mean death that's not otherwise expected or followed by a physician that falls under our jurisdiction for review. Following the board certification process, we do a continual maintenance of board certification through quarterly questions with the American Board of Pathology, as well as yearly continuing medical education requirements that are performed throughout the year. Yeah.
And how long have you been board certified in forensic pathology?
Since I started here in 2013, but board certification was in 2008.
Okay. And where did you work before you worked at the Alaska State Medical Examiner's Office?
I was, I did general pathology for 4 years there at Grant County Hospital in Grant County, Indiana, followed by 3 years of forensic pathology as a medical examiner at the King County Medical Examiner's Office in Seattle, Washington. And then I've been here since 2013, December. Yeah.
Okay, so total years conducting autopsies, how long would you say?
20.
Okay. And in that time, have you been qualified as an expert in the field of forensic pathology?
Yes.
In what states?
Indiana, and Washington State, and Alaska.
Okay. More times than you can count?
Yes.
Okay. At this point, Judge, I would offer Dr. Gallagher as an expert in the field of forensic pathology.
Any objection?
No, Judge.
He's so qualified.
Can I have you start by explaining to the jury, I guess, the role of the forensic pathologist or the medical examiner in a death investigation?
Yes. So when we get notified that there's a death, information's passed along to us to determine whether it's going to be a jurisdiction that a case that we take jurisdiction on. The information goes to our medical legal death investigators at the office. Following a case being accepted as our jurisdiction, we have different levels of exams. Sometimes we'll not need to bring the person in, and we'll be able to review their medical history records and certify the cause and manner of death on the death certificate. Other cases where we want to do a limited exam, we'll bring them in. We'll do a full head-to-toe examination of the person, just noting any normal natural disease processes and/or injuries, and then we'll take body fluids, blood, vitreous from the eye, urine. We'll send those out for toxicology studies. And then we'll review their medical history and determine their cause and manner of death. And then in other cases where we need to do a full internal autopsy examination, we'll bring them in and we will again do a head-to-toe examination. The first thing we do when we bring them in is we take a photograph of how they arrived in the office, the body bag that is closed, and then we'll take additional photographs, and then we'll take them out of the body bag, we'll remove clothing, take pictures before and after cleaning, and then in cases where evidence is collected, that evidence is collected prior to cleaning of the body, and then again, body fluids are taken for toxicology studies, and then we'll go ahead with an internal examination after our head-to-toe external examination, and we'll review all of their organs, brain, heart, lung, abdominal organs, and then we'll examine those for any natural diseases or injuries, and then those go into a report. Essentially, we wait for the toxicology studies to come back. Sometimes we do microscopic studies of the biopsies we take, and all of that information it's put together in the autopsy report for the ultimate determination. Is what our office is charged with, is to determine a proper certification of the death as to the cause of death and the manner of death.
And when you say cause of death, what does that mean?
Cause of death would be the event or the finding that is the cause of death. If it's an accident, it might be a blunt force injury. If it's a natural disease process, it could be heart disease. It could be emphysema, lung disease, or whatever disease process that we find during our studies. That would be the cause of death, and that's the cause of the immediate death.
Okay, and then when you talk about manner of death, what are kind of the range? What's the options?
Manner of death, we have several to choose from. We have natural death, we have accidents, we have suicide, which is an injury to oneself, whether that's a traumatic injury from a blunt force or an injury from a weapon, or if it's a intentional ingestion of too many drugs, that would all fall under the suicidal manner. And then we have homicide, which is an injury caused by another individual. And then we have undetermined as another classification that we can use sometimes when the manner is either overlapping or not totally clear, and that it lands in only one of those other options. Then we'll choose undetermined for cases like those.
And in this case, I kind of want to start with the bottom line and then work back through what you did. Were you able to determine a cause and manner of death for Saria Hildabrand?
Yes.
And what were those?
Her cause of death was a penetrating, indeterminate range gunshot wound of the head, and the manner of death that I certified was as a homicide.
Okay. You said indeterminate range. Indeterminate or intermediate?
Intermediate, sorry.
Okay. I put my glasses back on as well. So I want to talk with you a little bit about how you come to those conclusions. Does somebody from the medical examiner's office go out and observe and collect the body from the scene?
Depends on the jurisdiction where it happened. If it's outside of our physical response area, then the body will be collected by troopers or officials at the scene of that location. If it is within our jurisdiction, then one of our death investigators goes to the scene for securing the body and bringing them back to our office.
Okay, so a death in essentially a park in Anchorage.
That would be our response area.
And then you get involved the next morning?
It depends on when they get into the office, but after they're brought in to the office, typically the next business day, depending on the amount of cases that are at the examiner's office to do, they'll come up for the examination that we'll perform.
Okay. What was the date and time that you performed an autopsy on Saria Hildabrand?
Yes, if I refer to my report, on the first page, it was August 11 of 2023 where we did our exam.
Okay. And what time in the morning?
0700, basically 7:15 in the morning.
And what were your pathologic diagnoses? What did you observe about her?
Yes, so on the front page of my report, I always summarize everything. So she had the cause of death injury was a penetrating intermediate range gunshot wound of the head. So that was an entrance that entered on the forehead, and then it passed through the skin, through the bone, and into the brain, and then caused lots of injuries, the disruption and pulpification of the soft tissue of the brain, bleeding around the brain, bleeding within the parenchyma or the body of the brain. And then the trajectory was basically a front to back, is the pathway. And then we did recover several fragments of the copper and lead colored metal projectile or bullet from our examination.
Okay, and I want to go through those things. You said there's an entrance wound, and what side of her forehead was that on?
It's just left of the midline. So the midline there, so on the left side of the forehead is the entrance wound.
Okay, and when you say a penetrating wound, does that mean there was or was not an exit wound?
Penetrating wound is one where we'll be able to recover fragment or fragments of the bullet. So if it's a perforating wound, typically there's an entrance, there's a nice exit, and oftentimes there's no remaining material that we can collect from the bullet.
Okay, but this was penetrating, so there were bullet fragments that remained?
Yes.
And without a clear, defined exit wound?
Yes.
Okay. And you talked about the injuries to her brain, the hemorrhage, the pulpification of the brain tissue along the wound pathway. Was there subarachnoid hemorrhaging throughout the entirety of her brain?
Yes.
And based on those injuries that you observed, is this a gunshot that would have essentially incapacitated or killed her instantly?
Yes.
Okay. She wouldn't have been able to move on her own after that?
No.
Okay. And you talked about photographs. Do you take photographs as well as the Anchorage Police Department?
Yes.
Okay. And is it common for someone from the crime scene team to respond?
During the autopsy?
Yes.
Typically, yes. Not always, but depends on their circumstances or their staffing.
Okay. But your office takes photographs as well?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to show you what I have marked for identification and provided to counsel in the court as states exhibits 260 through 265. Go ahead and take a look at those and let me know when you're done.
Okay.
Okay. Do those fairly and accurately depict the injuries to Miss Hildabrand, the x-ray that was taken, and the fragments that were removed from her brain and skull?
Yes.
Okay, I'd move at this point for the admission of 260 to 265.
Any objection?
How we maintain our previous objection.
I'm sorry.
I said we maintain our previous.
All right. Overruled. They're admitted. You may.
Madam Clerk, can I have you turn down the lights? And the first two photographs, is it fair to say that these do show her injuries?
Yes.
Okay. And when you're taking photographs, do you actually take sometimes dozens, if not hundreds?
Yes.
Okay. So this is really limited to just show the injuries relative to her death?
Yes.
Okay. So, what does 260 depict?
This is a photograph of the left side of the decedent here, she is looking up towards the ceiling, and then you have some defects there in the skin, surrounded by some bruising. If you have a great.
I'm going to give you the laser pointer's the red button on top.
Okay. So here you have the defect of the skin. This is the entrance wound itself. There's a couple other defects here, and then those are consistent with potential partial exits of a fragmenting bullet. There is these dark areas of bruising around the areas of skin defect, and she also has what we call stippling marks that are noted around the wound.
Okay, and I want to talk with you about the stippling in just a minute, but let's kind of take this piece by piece. What you have called the entrance wound, how do you know that that's an entrance?
We have a defect here, which is the actual splitting of the skin as the projectile goes through. And then we have, here you can see this red area that's kind of below and then kind of comes down here. That's abrasion. You can also see some of it up here and as well as there. So that's an abrasion margin, which is typical of an entrance gunshot wound, in that as the bullet goes into the skin stretches, and then the skin rubs the bullet as the bullet goes through, and it creates that margin of abrasion around it.
Okay, and then you identified the other two wounds as potentially being partial exit wounds. Is that based on the location of where fragments were recovered from, essentially?
Yes, it also is based on kind of the area on the skull where the fracture is, as well as the fragmentation of the bullet itself that we see during our examination. So when something exits the skin, typically, not in every case, but typically you won't see the abrasion margin I just described around the entrance wound, because as the fragment comes out, there's nothing on the outside of that skin, so it just kind of tents out, and then it splits from the inside out as the fragment leaves. And so the skin, as long as there's nothing pushed against it, will not develop an abrasion.
Okay, and I want to come back to the stippling in just a minute, but to kind of solidify that that's the entrance and exit, did you also peel back her scalp to show on the skull where the entrance and exit was?
Yes.
And is that depicted in State's Exhibit 261?
Yes.
So can you show the jury on here where the entrance is versus the exit?
So here the skin has been reflected forward over the face, so the scalp is been reflected forward. You can see a lot of this bleeding in the scalp. That's called subgaleal hemorrhage. And then here's the entrance site, which corresponds with that front defect that was seen on the previous picture. And so here you have an internally beveled skull fragment, which is, again, what you see during an entrance wound. And then you have a partially externally beveled here. So that's what we call kind of a keyhole type of a wound, where the bullet kind of comes in and begins to break apart, and then some of those fragments can go into the head and brain area, and then some of them will escape outward and then exit, which is what this looks to be consistent with, an externally beveled area of that wound. So it's a pretty unique and not too common entrance fracturing of the skull, and it depends. I mean, basically, it's just kind of at the angle where it's kind of coming in, and where the brain or the skull itself kind of folds away and goes backward, kind of creates that area where the keyhole type of a fracture is more likely.
So I want to go back to 260 and talk with you about stippling and what stippling is and where you observe it here.
Yeah, so stippling, we have different distances that we can determine on a gunshot wound. So if it's a contact wound, you will have just the abrasion margin that's around that bullet, and then there'll be some staining of that abrasion margin and the tissues underneath with dark soot from just the gunpowder burning and smoking as it leaves the gun. And then the rest of the skin is completely clear because everything at a contact wound enters the wound itself. And then you have a wound that's a little further away. We call those intermediate range wounds. And those are wounds that will have varying densities or varying dense areas to less dense areas of stippling. Stippling is small abrasions that happen to the skin as the unburned fragments of gunpowder strike the skin and fall away. And so those unburned fragments strike the skin and create these abrasions. And if you have a close range wound that's not contact, but it's a close range, you'll have a pretty dense pattern. So it'll be just kind of around the entrance wound, but it might be a centimeter or so wide if it's a near wound. If it's about 6 inches away or less, typically, you might see some of that soot staining right around a very dense area of stippling. And if it's even further away, then you'll get spread out areas of stippling, just the small pink spots that are happening on the skin as the gunpowder particles strike the skin. But it's too far away for any of the soot to get on the skin or into the tissues themselves. And so what you have here, and you can see right up here at the top of the forehead, is where these small little red spots start. And that goes all the way up. You can see it right there at the hairline. And then you can still see it down here at the hairline on the left side of the head in front of the left ear. And then wrapping around this eyebrow here. So that's the entire dimension. So all those small little red spots that you see are stippling marks from unburned particles of gunpowder that strike the skin. And those vary in distance depending on the gun, depending on the ammunition. If it's a typical handgun, you can see that, roughly within 2 foot or, maybe a little more than 2 foot. If it's a highly powerful round or a magnum round with extra gunpowder, might see that further out. If it's a rifle, you might see these stippling marks at even 3 feet or so. The best way to determine exactly how far that is away from in a particular gun is to test that gun in the crime lab with the firearms expert with the same lot of ammunition that is suspected to have been involved with the actual injury. And so then they can determine, the density and how far away something would be in their direct testing.
So it sounds like, based on your medical opinion, is this a contact wound?
No.
Okay. Clearly no, or?
Clearly.
Okay. And is that because there's no soot, no stippling right around the margin of that wound?
Yeah, this is a pretty broad pattern here. So I measured it in my autopsy report at 9 centimeters by 8 centimeters.
Okay. And you would expect that this photo in particular, several around it, might be used by the ballistics expert to get a more accurate range? Yes,
and they could also review the measurement that was taken at the autopsy exam.
Okay. And what your finding is intermediate range gunshot wound, and generally where would you estimate that range to be?
Yeah, if it's a handgun, again, I would say 2 foot or so. And as it gets closer to the skin, this broad pattern would get closer and closer until it's, very dense near the entrance wound itself. But this is a broad pattern. So.
But certainly not contact.
Definitely.
And not close to contact.
No.
Okay. And does that help feed your diagnosis, or not your diagnosis, but your opinion about the manner of death?
Yes,
Okay, and that's why you say homicide as opposed to suicide?
yes.
Okay. I want to talk with you. I'm going to move off the screen for just a moment. You talked, I think you clarified, but this is an injury that Saria would have died from immediately?
Yes.
Okay, she wouldn't have been moving on her own volition at all after this?
No.
Would you expect a large amount of blood from a wound like that?
It certainly can bleed heavily, yes.
Okay. So I want to talk with you a little bit about some of the other things on Saria's body. Did she have clothing and personal effects with her?
She did.
Okay, and you logged those on your report, right?
Let me double check my report. Yes, page 2, I have a description of the items that were received with her.
Did she have a wedding ring with her?
Looking on page 2 of my report. I don't see that I have written down. Doesn't mean it wasn't there. Sometimes they may be collected in other areas.
I'm not trying to trick you, doctor. You didn't record a wedding ring?
I did not.
Okay. Did you record earrings?
I did.
No, nasal ring?
Yeah, she had number 7 of the report. I describe her right hoop-like earring, and then she had a nasal septum ring of the nose. So.
Okay, and she had a necklace?
And she did have a necklace, yes.
Okay. Underwear and a t-shirt?
Yes.
Okay. Did she appear, otherwise you said you did a full head to toe. Did she appear otherwise healthy?
Yes.
Okay. And that includes a review of her organ systems, gastrointestinal tract, musculoskeletal system, etc.?
Yes.
Okay. You talked a little bit about toxicology. What did you take to send out for toxicology?
We sent on her NMS Laboratories is the laboratory that does our toxicology, and we sent them blood from the femoral vein, which is the leg area, as well as some heart blood and some fluid from the eye and some of the gastric content from the stomach.
Okay, and did they return a blood alcohol concentration back to you?
Objection.
Approach, please. You may answer.
Okay. What was her blood alcohol content?
Yeah, she had a blood alcohol content of 0.048 grams per milliliter, which is below the alcohol intoxication of 0.08 that they typically say for intoxication of drivers.
Okay. So 0.048, and I want to talk with you a little bit about this. When somebody dies, does their blood alcohol content either stop rising or stop dissipating, or will it continue to rise or continue to dissipate?
It can rise somewhat as decomposition begins, so a small amount of that alcohol can be seen in patients that have advancing decomposition. Typically, it's a pretty small number. Like I think things of 0.01 to 0.02 or so, maybe a little more than that, can be from or can be directly from decomposition.
Okay. But other than that, it's fairly static.
Yeah.
Okay. Even if somebody was, say, deceased for days before you took that blood?
Yeah.
Okay. And I want to talk with you just a little bit about the items that were retrieved from Ms. Hildebrand. What is State's Exhibit 262?
This is a X-ray that we take prior to the internal examination.
Okay. And can you show the jury on the X-ray where the bullet fragments were recovered from?
Yeah, I don't know if we can dim the light a little bit, but
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
this is the AP X-ray of the head, so it's front to back, and we can see a lot of these white dense fragments. They're metal fragment, metal density fragments on X-ray, and we can see one here as well. And so these are metal fragments of the projectile that were recovered.
Okay. And then are the next three photographs, 63, 64, and 65 images of those fragments that were removed from her brain and skull?
Yeah, they are. And I just wanted to point out that this up here is a zipper from the body bag, so you can. That's not it's not a part of the projectile that we recovered. So
Okay. You can also see the metal on her necklace as
Yeah.
well. Okay. And I guess just for process, X-ray is something that happens to everybody when they come in, and that just happens while they're still inside of a body bag.
yeah, it depends on the case, but in this case, yes.
Okay. And then what is 263?
This is a fragment of likely jacket material from the bullet as it breaks apart as it was going in through the skull. So, and this is recovered on the left front of the skull. So basically the entrance wound is there, the fracture is there, and we recovered this piece from that skull area.
Okay, and you're pointing to an area that is between essentially the left front of the skull and the temple?
Yes.
Okay. And then what is 264?
These are just additional fragments that were recovered on dissection of the brain from, again, these are metal fragments of the bullet.
And then 265?
And this is another small fragment of, looks like lead core material of the bullet itself that was recovered from the left side of the brain. Left parietal is just the mid lobe of the brain between the frontal lobe and the occipital lobe, which is the front and back. So it's the left side.
And were each of those pieces of evidence collected and taken by the Anchorage Police Department crime scene team that was there with you at autopsy?
Yes, we logged them in, and they have to sign them out, and then they ultimately take them and sign them back into the crime lab, and they do whatever they need to do.
And just to reiterate, if you can tell the jury one last time the cause and manner of death that you were able to make in this case.
Sure. Cause of the death was penetrating intermediate range gunshot wound of the head with the projectiles that we recovered there, and the manner of death as a homicide.
Thank you. I believe that's all the questions I have for you, Doctor.
Thank you. Counsel?
May we approach quickly, Rich?
Yes. Right. Does anyone need a break before we continue? No, good to keep going? It's fine if you need a break. No? All right. We'll keep going.
Dr. Gallagher.
Morning.
We've met before in the course of this case, correct?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to just kind of jump in. I want to start a little bit, talking a little bit about your background. You're a doctor,
Yes.
and you've been a pathologist for 20 years, correct? Or more?
Yeah, I think finished my fellowship in 2004, so I guess 22 years.
And that fellowship was in pathology specifically.
Yeah, I did one forensic fellowship and one cytology fellowship.
And just so to refresh our recollection, what exactly is pathology?
That's the study of disease.
Okay, and how does it relate to death investigation?
What we're charged with is to examine a body in an unattended death that we need to determine for proper certification the cause and the manner of death. And so in these cases, we will review the medical history, and we review the body, and depending on the case, an internal examination and documentation of any disease or injuries that are pertinent to the cause and the manner of death.
Okay, and in your studies to become a forensic pathologist, you went to medical school, and then you also had fellowships and residencies, correct?
Yes.
In the course of your education, did you have textbooks?
Yes.
And are you familiar with Spitz and Fisher's medical legal investigation of death?
Yes.
Specifically the guidelines for the application of pathology to crime investigation?
I know the textbook. So.
You know the textbook? Is it in its 5th edition?
I don't know what edition it's currently at.
Okay. And why do you know this textbook?
We just study it during our fellowship, and we refer to it as needed during our cases, as well as other texts in pathology.
Okay. And do you, in your continuing education, do you use Spitz and Fisher's medical legal investigation of death?
Continuing education, those are from conferences that are professional conferences, and then we review the questions that are sent to us by the Board of Pathology for review. So not specifically any textbook.
Okay.
Yeah.
But fair to say you're familiar with Spitz and Fisher's medical legal investigation of death?
Yes.
It's a reliable authority.
It's a common book in the field. Yes.
Would you say it's reliable?
I mean, everybody's got different opinions on things, but it's one of the main textbooks.
So yes.
Yes.
And it's published?
Yes.
Okay. If we could briefly approach Judge.
Yes.
So, Dr. Gallagher, I want to kind of move on now. I'm going to reference Spitz and Fisher's medical legal investigation of death throughout our conversation today. But I want to talk a little bit about your role. You're a medical examiner
Yes,
for the state of Alaska.
yes,
You're a busy guy.
yes.
About how many autopsies would you estimate you do a year?
250 to 350.
250 to 350.
Yeah.
And so that's it. And I'm guessing you don't work every day of the week.
Yeah, 5 days a week. So typically, it depends, but 250 to 350 cases a year.
And so fair to say, you've written a lot of reports as well.
Yes,
And you document your findings in your report.
yes,
And you rely on your report when you're doing that many autopsies.
yeah. I mean, when you, you rely on it for look back for recollection. Yeah, certainly. When depending on how long ago a case was.
It's an important aspect of your practice, fair to say.
Yeah,
And you understand that your report goes to various people, including the district attorney's office at
Yeah.
times.
yes,
Specifically in this case, your report was provided to the district attorney's office.
yes,
And you understand it goes to defense counsel as well.
yes,
And you make sure to be accurate when you're writing a report.
every effort. Yes,
Every effort. And there's a pretty big difference between an intermediate gunshot wound and an indeterminate gunshot wound. Is that fair to say?
yes. Intermediate has the stippling. Indeterminate is something that doesn't have the stippling, and it may be further away. It may not be, depending on clothing that may have filtered out such the findings that would typically be seen on an intermediate.
And you've testified today that in your opinion, the gunshot wound that you observed on Mrs. Hildabrand was an intermediate gunshot wound, correct?
Yes,
And fair to say, when you authored your reports, you did not consistently refer to the gunshot wound as an intermediate gunshot wound.
it is an intermediate range wound, but in the third page of the report, after head and neck, the head of that paragraph says penetrating indeterminate range gunshot wound. That is an error.
That's an it.
Yes.
Okay. And I want to talk to you a little bit more about some of the information. You noted when you were examining Mrs. Hildabrand that decomposition changes were noted, correct?
Yes.
And there's a process in death called levity levity with the blood pooling. Is that correct?
Lividity.
Lividity, thank you. And so can you tell the jury what lividity is?
Lividity is a settling of the blood after death. It doesn't pump around in the vessels anymore, and so if someone is laying down with their face up, then the blood will settle down, and then the areas that are up will look paler, and then the areas that are below where the blood settles will look darker, because that's where the blood is settling.
Thank you. And did you note that process with Mrs. Hildabrand?
Looking at her report, page 2 is usually where I would put it. If it's something that is a significant finding to the exam, I'll put it in there. If it's not, I don't always put a specific comment to that effect.
Let me ask you this, about how long after someone passes away does it take for that process to occur?
Well, it'll begin. You might be able to start seeing it in a half hour or so, depending on blood loss. If there's more blood loss, then that ability to see that color differentiation as blood settles is limited because more blood loss has occurred. And then if you're a darker skinned individual, again, harder to identify those lividity changes as easily as a lighter skinned person.
Okay, thank you. And then I want to just follow up on some decomposition issues that might be present. So is it fair to say that decomposition can include the disintegration of blood vessels and spillage of decomposing blood, which may be mistaken for bruising?
Blood can leave the circulation as it gets hemolyzed. The blood will break down, and then if the tissues or capillaries in those areas, the hemolyzed blood can exit the bloodstream and get into those tissues, at which point those areas of lividity would become fixed, and you can't push them out. If you have a relatively fresh person with the lividity and you push your thumb into the skin, the thumb print will make the skin pale because that blood is still in the blood vessels at the time. And if it's after fixation, then you push on the skin and it won't change in color.
Thank you. And fair to say that somewhere between 36 to 48 hours into the decomposition process, the skin can start to look greenish or purplish.
Yes.
Thank you. And specifically for Mrs. Hildabrand, did you note that there was a green-gray decomposition-like change
Yes.
on the neck?
I don't know where.
I direct you to page 2.
She definitely. What'd you say? Image?
Page 2.
Oh, page 2.
Paragraph and it's 2 under general description.
Yes. So. Yes.
And then you also noted gray and green marbling type of decomposition type change noted to the skin of the face, neck, and upper chest, correct?
Yes.
Thank you. So I want to talk to you again about the manner of death. That's important in your profession.
Yes.
Essentially, when you were doing an autopsy as a medical examiner, you determine cause of death.
Yes.
And you could determine manner of death.
Yes.
And the cause of death is essentially the medical reason for the death, fair to say?
Yes.
And then the manner of death is more how this occurred.
Yes.
And in your profession, there are 5 potential manners of death.
Yes.
There's homicide.
Yes.
There's suicide.
Yes.
There's accident.
Yes.
There's natural causes.
Yes.
And essentially undetermined, unknown.
Yes.
And homicide, that is when you determine a death has been caused by another person, correct?
Yes.
It doesn't tell you, it doesn't tell you the mental state of the person. You're just saying it was caused by another person, correct?
Yes.
Suicide would be the intentional taking of one's own life, correct?
Yes.
And then accident could include taking one's own life, but not intentionally.
Yes.
And natural causes is someone passes away from, say, a heart attack or something?
Yes, that would be a natural cause.
Okay, and then the undetermined would be you don't have enough information to make a decision.
Yes.
Okay. So I want to talk more about the manner of the death in this case.
Yes.
And I want to talk to you a little bit more about Spitz and Fisher's medical legal investigation. If I may approach the witness.
Yes, thank you.
I'm going to ask you to hold on to this. Don't necessarily, you can look at it, but I'm going to ask you to read from it up. So I want to clarify one small thing first. You talked about an intermediate gunshot, correct?
I did.
And fair to say that in your profession, gunshots can also be qualified as a contact shot, a close range shot, or a distance shot.
Yeah, I call them contact range, intermediate, or indeterminate. Distant, I don't really use that term because there's not always something that not being there, you don't know if that bullet may have gone through another intermediate object that would filter out the findings that would make it to the skin on someone. So if it went through a door, a window, or a wall, it might take those findings that would normally get to the skin off of the skin because of that intermediate object.
Okay, and so what I would ask you to do is I would direct you to the last page of the packet I approached you with, marked on the top left, 314. And I would just ask you, there is a highlighted portion of page 314. It'll be the last page of the packet I handed you.
Okay.
And I would ask you to read the highlighted portion following. The terminology most often used to describe the range of fire is as follows.
Right. So you have highlighted here on page 314 of this textbook, talks about contact shot when the weapon is fired with the muzzle in contact with the body. A close range shot is when gun smoke is deposited on the target, and distant shot when the muzzle to target distance exceeds the limits in which gun smoke is identifiable on the target.
So fair to say in your profession, the terminology contact shot, close range shot, and distance shot are used?
Contact range, close range. Again, our office doesn't use distant because of the possibility of intermediate objects, so we just call those indeterminates and not distant.
But you do use contact shot and close range shot?
Yes.
And when you are determining manner of death and a gun is involved, one of the things that you're looking at is range of fire, correct?
Yes,
And range of fire would be defined as the distance from the muzzle of the gun to the object, correct?
yes,
And for a close range shot, some circumstances, a close range shot could be ruled a homicide, correct?
yes,
Some circumstances, a close range shot could be ruled a suicide.
yes,
And in some circumstances, a close range shot could be ruled an accident.
yes,
And I would direct you to page 356 of the packet I handed you. It's stapled.
okay,
And again, this is from Spitz and Fitcher's medical legal investigation of death. If you were able, I'd ask you to read the highlighted portion starting on the bottom of page 356 and going into page 357.
okay. On page 356, under homicide, suicide, or accident, it says distinction between homicide, suicide, or accident may be difficult and sometimes impossible, yet it is the first question asked by the investigator in every death involving a shooting. Certain criteria are used by pathologists to define the manner of death within a reasonable degree of medical certainty. Among these, evaluation of the range of fire is of the utmost importance.
Thank you. Do you agree with that?
I agree.
And next, I want to direct you to page 363 of Spitz and Fitcher's medical legal investigation of death. In the packet I handed you, I would ask you to read the highlighted portion.
Yes, so they have a paragraph saying an accidental gunshot can be distinguished from a homicidal or suicidal injury only by the circumstances that surround the incident. It is the duty of the pathologist to confirm or dispute the account that was given of the incident based on his findings at the post-mortem examination of the victim. That is, to prove whether the injury is consistent with the manner in which it was said to have occurred. The availability of photographs and diagrams of the scene is helpful, but personal viewing of the scene gives a better perspective.
Thank you. And I want to start with the first sentence there. An accidental gunshot can be distinguished from a homicidal or suicidal injury only by the circumstance that surround the incident. Do you agree with that?
I would agree with that.
And do you agree that personal viewing of the scene gives a better perspective?
Well, we have our investigator review of the scene, photographs and circumstances portrayed by the investigating agency as well. So that's why we take photographs of the scene, and even when it's outside of our jurisdictional response period, then we'll have the troopers document and catalog the scene also.
Okay. So I guess the question I have for you, Dr. Gallagher, is the statement in this textbook, the availability of photographs and diagrams of the scene is helpful, but personal viewing of the scene gives a better perspective. Do you agree with that?
Well, we have our review of the scene by our medical legal death investigators. So,
Okay. And fair to say you personally were not at the scene of the
a
scene.
personal review of the scene is a personal investigation by our office. It doesn't need to be visited by an individual in particular, because they're trained medical legal death investigators.
Okay. And I want to direct you now to page 313. It would be chapter 8, injury by gunfire. Not in this legal packet.
Okay.
And I want to just ask you to read into the record the highlighted portion of page 313 of Spitz and Fisher's medical legal investigation of death.
It says accurate assessment of the range of fire requires test firing of the gun with the type of ammunition that was used in the shooting.
Do you agree with that?
I agree.
Thank you. And then I direct you to page 328.
Okay.
And I'd ask you to read the highlighted portion.
It says the approximate distance from which a close range shot was fired can be evaluated only by test firing the particular weapon using the same ammunition as used in the shooting case under consideration.
And do you agree with that?
I agree.
And so I want to talk to you a little more about the way you determined the manner of death for Mrs. Hildabrand. You conducted an autopsy, correct?
Yes.
And there was an investigator involved in the case, correct?
Yeah, I don't have that information in front, but it's a scene of our local response, so we would have had an investigator respond.
Did you review the investigative findings in formulating your opinion in this case?
Yes.
Okay. And I want to talk about the main issue that you based your opinion on in coming to the manner of death. And is it fair to say that the main issue that you were looking at in determining the manner of death in this case was that it has nothing to do with the scene investigation, it's the injury, it is an intermediate range?
It is an intermediate range wound. And the location of the wound also is atypical for self-inflicted wound, and the distance from the gun to the decedent's injury on the head is at a distance that would make it difficult, if not impossible, for them to trigger that weapon themselves.
The distance. And the distance is the range of fire, correct?
Yes.
And in your opinion, it was 2 feet, at least.
It's again, the stippling that you see on a intermediate range wound, if a handgun is used, generally is 2 feet, 2.5 feet, and gets less as it gets closer. And as the closer the wound gets, the narrower that pattern of stippling becomes. And you have on page 328 of this report, there's a definition. There's actually a photograph of a closer intermediate range wound that's a significant closer distance, much tighter pack of that abrasion compared to the one that we had in our own. But this particular pattern is something that to identify the exact distance from that weapon to cause a stippling pattern of that 9 by 8 centimeter needs to be and should be most accurately confirmed through testing at the crime lab for the firearms expert.
Thank you. So I just want to kind of follow up again. So, fair to say that the main issue, the main basis for your determination that this was a homicide was that you determined that the injury to Mrs. Hildebrand's forehead was an intermediate range, correct?
It is an intermediate range, and we of course use our exam findings plus the investigative records from the scene, as well as the findings of the intermediate injuries to the head. All that comes together. It's a combination of the scene investigation findings as well as the autopsy findings.
Dr. Gallagher, like I said, we've met before, correct?
Yes.
We met in a teens meeting a couple months ago. Mrs. Hurley was there.
Yes.
A gentleman named Mr. Stuart Rice was there, an investigator with the Public Defender
I
Agency.
don't recall all the people involved. I remember the meeting, yes.
Okay. And when we spoke, you were doing the best to tell the truth, correct?
Yes.
And you were relying on your experience as in the field of forensic pathology at that time.
Yes.
And you were familiar with the case that we're talking about today when we
Yes.
spoke a few months ago.
Yes.
Okay. And do you recall me asking the question, what facts did you rely on in the investigative reports to reach a conclusion that Mrs. Hildebrand's manner of death was a homicide? Do you recall me asking you that question?
No.
Okay. Would it refresh your recollection to see a transcript of that?
Not really.
No? Okay. So you don't recall that conversation, what you said to them?
That question, no, I don't recall.
You don't recall saying, well, her main issue is that, and it's not, has nothing to do with the scene investigation, is the injury itself is an intermediate range. Do you recall making that statement?
No, but that's an accurate assessment of the wound itself, yes. So that means the gun was at distance from her head at the time of discharge. It doesn't have anything to do specifically with where that injury occurs, whether that's at one place or another.
Do you recall going on to say she's got a pattern of stippling, gunpowder abrasions around the interest wound? So those are indicative of it depends on depends on the weapon, of course, but typically a handgun would be, up to 2 feet away for that type of an injury to occur.
Yeah, that's reasonable.
You recall going on to say if it's a rifle, it can be 3 feet or more depending on the weapon and the ammunition. She had a 9x8 centimeter distribution of stippling pattern abrasion around the interest wound. So I can confirm that wound, it took place from a distance and is not a close contact wound.
Yeah, that's not a close contact wound. A distance, it's not on the skin. It's not slightly away from the skin, because that would be a close range. Typically that pattern is about 1 centimeter wide, and as it gets further away, that pattern begins to spread out as more distance occurs. So in this particular case, it's intermediate range, and it's fairly broad across her forehead to her left side of her ear area. That whole area around that is a pretty broad pattern of stippling. And to determine the distance of that particular weapon and that ammunition to create that pattern is best determined in the crime lab through a firearms expert testing that weapon and that ammunition.
And you have never done that, correct?
No.
And fair to say, if someone trained in ballistics had a different opinion as far as the range of the gunshot wound in this case, would you defer to that opinion?
Yes. I mean, they would have, they would have to do the testing to determine the distance of that gun at from the they would, I would defer to their expertise in setting up the testing, but it would be accurate to have a head-shaped diagram or head-shaped device with whatever they use for determining that pattern, so it's properly shaped to her typical skull. And so that would be something that they would have to set up in their own testing procedures. But that's the best way to determine precisely the distance that would create that same stipple pattern.
And while you are a forensic pathologist, you are not a ballistics expert, correct?
Correct.
And again, you agree that accurate assessment of the range of fire requires test firing of the gun with the type of ammunition that was used in the shooting.
Agreed.
And you recall, I want to take you back to that conversation that we had a few months ago. Do you recall me asking you the question, besides the stippling and your determination that this was an intermediate gunshot wound, what other facts were you relying on to determine that this was a homicide, classified as a homicide? Do you recall that question?
Not particularly, but we, all of our cases are signed out with review of the autopsy findings, toxicology findings, investigative findings, and medical histories if they're pertinent. All that's put together before the certification to determine the cause and the manner.
And you recall in that conversation responding to that question, well, certainly like you mentioned, where she was found is certainly an unusual location, but the main finding of a gunshot wound that is further away that an individual holding the gun should be able to accomplish on one's own self is a major factor in the determination of the manner. Do you recall making that statement?
I agree with that statement.
And I want to talk just a little more about a few other of your observations in the course of your autopsy in this case. Do you recall if you documented any defensive type wounds on Mrs. Hildabrand?
Let me double check my report. I don't recall offhand. I don't see that I recalled any specific defensive type wounds.
Is that something you generally would look for in an auto?
Yes, I'd look that in every case.
And would you document that if they were there?
Yes,
And you did not see any?
I did not.
Okay. And you did your autopsy on August 11th, 2023,
Yes,
and you wrote your report on January 10th, 2024.
yes,
You did not test fire the gun in this case, correct?
correct.
And you were, you've never been to the Hildebrand apartment, fair to say?
Correct.
Fair to say you were not there on August 6th, 2023 at 2:47 a.m.?
I was not.
You were not in the apartment?
I was not.
You were not in the building?
I was not.
And you did not see who pulled the trigger on the gunshot that killed Saria Hildabrand?
I did not.
Thank you.
Maybe Director.
What was our last fix about?
What's that? Our last one that we just did was 265, but the ones we did was 377.
376, and then that was 378. Dr. Gallagher, Ms. Brewster handed you a number of pages from a textbook from Spitz and Fisher, particularly 328. Did the photograph on page 328 strike something with you?
It's just, again, that's an intermediate photograph. It's a, you got the defect of the skin, and it's surrounded by this dense pattern of abrasion stipple marks. So that is a wound that, again, is intermediate range because it's not contact and things are not all going into the tissue at that point. But it's a much closer range because that pattern of stippling is very dense and very closely surrounding that entrance wound. So it's just a closer range.
Okay. And the text actually says where the, how distant it was, correct?
Let's see.
The adjacent injury, the one on the left, is inflicted at a close range 2 to 3 inches.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And the bullet wound on the right, what does that show?
This is, so that has a bullet wound on the right, has a well-demarcated ring of soot around that margin, and they're scorched. So just a close wound. Again, muzzle flame can come out of the weapon 1 to 3 inches. Soot can get onto the skin and the area up to 6, maybe 7 inches, depending on the gun and ammunition. And then beyond that period, as it gets further away, 6 inches, 7, 8, then you'll just get expanding patterns of the stipple marks that get smaller, just little red spots around the skin as it gets further away, up to the point that that particular weapon is too far away and the gunpowder doesn't have the kinetic energy required to leave marks on the skin at that point. So that from that point it becomes no longer an intermediate range wound, but it becomes an indeterminate range wound.
Okay. And so just for demonstrative purposes, I've marked that photograph. It states Exhibit 378. Is that what you have learned with those 2 gunshots would be a contact wound and a close contact, something 2 to 3 inches away?
Those would be good examples of a wound that's close. If there's nothing in between, like shirt or something that would filter that out. The one on the right is a good indication of what one would look like if it's a contact wound. Typically, if it's over the abdomen or chest, those contact wounds will be nice and round, like this particular one is, and it doesn't have any tearing. If it's a wound over the skull, because the skull is so close to the skin, a contact wound, the gas leaving the gun will kind of tent up the skin as it peels it away from the skull, and then that can tear. We call that stellate laceration of the contact wound. It needs to be basically a wound that occurs over a pretty shallow bone. So that's how that happens. And then again, the one on the left here shows one that is a very dense pattern of stippling, indicating a much closer wound. But
And of course, it's always going to vary depending on the type of weapon and ammunition used, as
Yes.
you've already testified. At this point, Judge, I'd move to introduce what I've called, I said 378, but I'm actually going to call it 338 as a demonstrative exhibit. It won't go back to the jury, but I'd like to pass it around now so they can view that photograph to see the difference.
Assuming no objection. All right.
You were asked some questions and approaching with 339. Forgive the stripes from the color printer. But you were asked some questions about lividity and decomposition.
Yes.
Okay, and can you see Saria's coloring on that photograph?
Yes. So, yeah.
Okay, and you were asked some questions about whether that green-gray decomposition change on her neck can tell you anything about the time of death?
Yeah, she does have some that greenish kind of coloration, kind of green-gray coloration as the decomposition begins to progress. It's in her upper chest, neck. You can kind of see it around the bridge of the nose. And then she has other things on her skin that are just some slipping of the skin, which is another common thing. Post-mortem decomposition change begins to develop. So.
Okay. And I think you were asked about a 48 to 36 hour window. Does that show she's been decomposing for kind of at least that long?
Yeah, it depends. Certainly, she's got some level of decomposition going on, so it's not super immediate after the injury. And again, that's depending on the environment. Some people, if it's 106 degrees in Mississippi, you can get advancing decomposition quite quickly. In a cooler environment, that can be delayed somewhat. But I don't have anything more to say about this level of decomposition, other than she does have some developing, and you can see that in the skin.
Okay. And being in water for a period of time, how would that impact decomposition?
Yeah, it depends. Sometimes it can increase the rate. Sometimes it can decrease the rate. A cool water environment can slow the rate, and typically that rigidity of musculature, which is called the rigor mortis, that'll begin to develop in the first 12 hours and stay solid for 12 hours and then dissipate over the next 12 hours. But again, it's an environmental thing. It'll set up faster and go away quicker in the summertime in the south, and I've seen it last months up here in Alaska, just because someone in water during cold months and then recovered months later, and they still have some rigor. So it's certainly very temperature and environmentally dependent.
Okay. And in this case, in your report, you noted that rigor mortis was no longer present in Saria's extremities.
Yeah.
Okay. You were asked about essentially a typographical mistake in your report, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. On page 3, did you write indeterminate instead of intermediate?
I did, right under the head and neck in the sentence that's about to describe the entrance wound. I called that indeterminate. That is an error. It
Okay.
should have been intermediate.
Okay. But your opinion, the very first page, says intermediate.
Yes.
Okay. And you testified at the grand jury and said intermediate?
Yes.
And you met with Miss Brewster some time ago and clarified for her that that was a typo in your report?
I believe so.
Okay. May I show you a page of that transcript? Just go and read that highlighted part and tell me if it refreshes your
Okay.
recollection.
Out loud or to myself?
To yourself.
Yes, I agree.
Okay. So you'd already clarified with her that that was a typo.
I did.
Okay. You're never saying that this is indeterminate. It's always been intermediate from your medical opinion?
Yes.
Okay. And I want to get back to the cause and, well, to the manner of death. You said the exam findings primarily guide your decision on manner of death, right?
Yes.
And to be able to put it in your report and on Ms. Hildabrand's death certificate, what degree of medical certainty do you have to have?
It's, certainly the death certificate is an opinion section. I mean, I do say on my first page of the report that it's opinion about the cause and manner. But my degree of medical certainty is a high level of medical certainty.
Okay. And your exam findings are that this is an intermediate gunshot range, which means was it likely to be self-inflicted?
Unlikely.
Why?
The distance of that patterned, relatively low density stippling, in my belief, is further away than someone could have triggered the weapon themselves, and it's not. It's unlikely to have been a pattern that can be inflicted by triggering it yourself. You'd have to have the distance from the gun to the head. So.
And does the angle and the side of the side of the head matter if you know, like, that she was predominantly right-handed?
Not necessarily, because sometimes left-handed people can do it left side, right side. So that it's an unusual location. If you're considering a suicide, it's not a typical location for that.
Okay, why?
Most suicides are either left temple, right temple, in the mouth, or underneath the skin, and they're almost all contact.
And this was decidedly not a contact wound?
Yes, no, it was not.
Okay, that's all the questions I have.
All right, thank you, doctor. I guess we step down. We've been going for quite a while. We're going to take a break at this